In Part 6, I touched briefly on the idea that Paul's explanation of the two covenants in Galatians, chapter 4, along with Matthew 1:17, gives us an idea of what is meant by Babylon in the book of Revelation. In Galatians, Paul uses Hagar and Sarah as allegories of these covenants, old and new, respectively. Paul then states that each covenant corresponds to the city of Jerusalem. But the first or Old Covenant refers to the actual city of Jerusalem in Paul's day, while the second or New Covenant refers to Jerusalem above. No doubt the writer of Hebrews speaks of Jerusalem above in the following: "But you have come to Mount Zion, and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable angels in festal gathering, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel." Who is Jerusalem above? It consists of the city or people of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. I believe this is what John saw when he was taken by the Spirit to the throne of God in Revelation, chapters 4 and 5. No wonder Jesus told Nicodemus that we must be born from above. The idea of born explains why Paul called Jerusalem above our mother. Two Jerusalems, and like the other twos in the illustration, there's really just one. So why does Paul describe two of them? Based on our understanding of the other components in the illustration, it shows the spiritual transition through which all of us pass. In other words, we move from the old covenant law to its spiritual nature. For the letter of the law kills, but the spirit of the law gives life. This shows that the true meaning of life as Jesus meant it is to walk in the unbiased and unconditional love of God. To put it plainly, present Jerusalem refers to our natural, carnal, and earthly position, while Jerusalem above refers to our life, which is hidden with Christ in God. This is why Jesus taught us to pray, "Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." In some studies, I mentioned that the old and new covenants run parallel. This goes back to my illustration of the two trees in the Garden of Eden, where our movement from left to right corresponds to going up, spiritually speaking. So allow me to emphasize, every bit of this is a picture of the divine principle of sowing and reaping, or resurrection working in our hearts and minds from the moment we enter this earthly plane. This is why resurrection is the core of Christian belief. And when we are willing to lay down the religious prejudices that have been worked into us by tradition, we will awaken to the fact that resurrection is not exclusive to the Christian belief, but worldwide in its application. Our Creator is not restricted by the prideful boundaries we have devised out of our carnal thinking. It is His process, not ours, so we don't have a monopoly on it. When describing the two covenants in Galatians 4, Paul speaks of those born by the slave woman Hagar as children of the desolate, corresponding with what Jesus said to the Pharisees in Matthew 23:38, that their house had been left to them desolate. This word is rendered wilderness 32 times and desert 13 times in the King James, pointing to the understanding and necessity of our day of trial in the wilderness of this world in order to humble us. This is why our spiritual transition is threefold. We begin as living souls when born into this world, but soon die because of the rise of pride in our hearts and minds when we are but children. What do I mean by pride? The inordinate love of the self. This death is pictured in the Genesis parable and the story of Adam, Eve, the serpent, and the tree of knowledge. In reality, Adam and Eve's death symbolizes the wilderness created by our own carnal-mindedness. Not only do we face it within, but also from those around us who resist the message of the cross or self-sacrifice. For everyone comes into this world as natural, and then becomes carnal. This is one reason why the world is in such turmoil. Though our carnal-mindedness is manifested outwardly on a constant basis, the root of the problem is always inward. Now, let's go to the Old Testament to consider the origin of Babylon. It is first mentioned in Genesis 10:10, where we are told that it's the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom, who was a mighty one on the earth. Not much detail is given other than the fact that Nimrod established Babel, along with 3 other cities, in the land of Shinar. Next, we come to Genesis chapter 11 and the story that most know as the Tower of Babel. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." On the surface of this story, we see several things with which most are familiar. But what lies beneath it? Note the statement, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens," followed by, "and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." Friend, there is more than one way for people to have one language and the same words. Yes, on the surface, this means everyone speaks the same dialect. However, is it not also true that when everyone is like-minded, they unify and speak the same words? Isn't that the core of any collective belief, regardless of the dialects involved? And what are these same words? "Let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." First, a city or collective. Second, a tower with its top in the heavens. Third, let us make a name for ourselves. Don't these 3 statements suggest man's pride and desire to ascend above others, even the Lord himself? So, is it not appropriate to say that the like-mindedness I speak of refers to the carnal mind? Think about it. If everyone in the room is carnal-minded, then don't all of them mimic each other since their thinking follows the same path? When viewed from this perspective, we find that the origin of Babylon is in the story of Adam and Eve and the serpent. Why do I say this? Because the word Babylon is derived from Babel, which Strong's defines as confusion. The root of this word means to overflow, specifically with oil. By implication, to mix. With the idea of mix in mind, what does the story of Adam and Eve's temptation show us? First, Eve considered the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Not good or evil, but both. Is this not a mix? Next, the serpent tells Eve, "You will not surely die, though God has warned them otherwise." Do we not see the beginning of pride in this statement? This is quickly followed by, "When you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Doesn't this align perfectly with a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves? Now, further study shows that the word Babylon may actually mean gate of God. Does this contradict our present perspective? It does not. Rather, it enhances it based on the following. But it is not the spiritual that is first, but the natural, and then the spiritual. The first man was from the earth, a man of dust. The second man is from heaven. The tree of knowledge symbolizes the old covenant law of God, for Paul said that if it had not been for the law, he would not have known sin. And again, by the law is the knowledge of sin. But what happens when the natural man takes hold of the law? He puffs up, becoming lifted up in pride and believing he is qualified to dictate to everyone else what is good and evil. However, here's what Paul says about our natural man. The natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him, and he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. Friend, it's not the law we need. It's the spiritual essence, which is love. Without the second, the first becomes a religious taskmaster. At this point, I will close this study, but be sure to join me for the next as we continue our look at Babylon.